Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Medtech Ventures podcast. I'm your host, Craig Townsend, and I'm delighted to be joined today by serial entrepreneur Manjit Mooker. Manjit, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Craig. Thank you for having me on today.
No worries. Look, we met a couple of weeks ago, and I thought to myself, here is a guy that has been there, done that, got several t-shirts from the world of medtech entrepreneurship, and I really enjoyed our conversation and thought, you know what, I think our listeners would like to hear some of your wisdom as well, Manjit. So thank you for joining me. Perhaps we could just start off then by quickly introducing yourself. What have you been doing in the medtech space, and what sort of drove your journey in the digital health sector?
Thanks for the question. When we talk about t-shirts, I've got quite a few ill-fitting t-shirts, so I think I've got quite a few t-shirts that have actually been good, positive, and ones that many more that haven't been. So your question, what kind of got me into the health tech sector? I've been in healthcare for probably about 15, 20 years, and I've been in technology for about 30 years. And I was first introduced into the health tech space maybe about I would say about 20 years ago, when I couldn't believe that there was such a disparity or disconnect between the way data was exchanged for patients between primary care, secondary care, and literally any fabric of healthcare that a patient would typically come into. And that kind of got me sort of bamboozled. I kind of started to scratch my head to the point I removed all the hair from my head, trying to figure out exactly what was causing that. But what's evident is we have a huge issue in healthcare. And I don't think that's just in the United Kingdom. I think that's worldwide, where there is a huge demand on healthcare because of the various lifestyle choices that we make now. But the technology is just not there, or I think there's probably perhaps a lot of bureaucracy that surrounds the way the technology is being used. And as a result, it's just prohibiting how we as people can be provided with care. And I'm a technologist by heart. And I thought, well, everything can be sorted with technology. But just to sort of as a disclaimer, I would never say technology is the only thing that solves healthcare. It's an enabler. Technology is an enabler, but we can actually help the way healthcare is delivered by using technology. So that got me into the field, and that got me interested. And so I kind of took that journey on board about a decade and a half, 2 decades ago, and first started off my health tech company back in 2009, 2010, just with an idea, and few years later, that company was then acquired after I scaled it to a few different people into the business, and then it was acquired by another very successful healthcare technology company that operates in the United States. And then I got involved in various different other companies, and today I'm back in healthcare because I clearly didn't have enough pain from the first journey that I thought, hey, let's go and do it again.
So that first company then, correct me if I'm wrong, it was really at the forefront of telemedicine, right? It was improving communications between medical environments and patients. And 15, 20 years ago, telemedicine wasn't necessarily a thing. We were at a transition point, and it was a long way off from the NHS. We were still using paper-based records. It was still incredibly manual. So talk to us a little bit then about the challenge of launching that business in a brave new world.
Yeah, honestly, you come across many companies who have come up with some amazing ideas, some tremendous technology, but what you typically find is those companies or people not only have to develop these radical and disruptive technologies, but they have to educate people on, why it's important, how to use them, what the benefits are, both for patients and for healthcare organizations. And I was no different. I had developed, it was more of a first of a kind mobile application that was going to be used in outpatients environments within hospitals. There was a big problem where there was a lot of did not attends that were causing a huge cost burden on the NHS, and it was a big problem that just wasn't getting sorted. So the way I tackled the problem is I wanted to use technology and empower the patient to have a mobile application that would help them essentially pick up their appointment rather than going through the traditional means of a GP letter, a referral letter, and then a huge number of letter communication between the patient and the GP and the hospital, and so many areas for that fracture to take place. And unfortunately, it would then result in patients not turning up and healthcare establishments losing a lot of money. So this technology was all about trying to save those issues and harmonize the way healthcare was delivered and speed up the process and remove all those barriers. So you're right. The big challenge then was technology or mobile apps were something that people didn't really understand. The traditional method was to go into an outpatient environment, was to go in and say, I've arrived. But how, to get to that point, the challenge was so significant that even getting a car parking space in a hospital was a chore. Finding, transportation to get the patient there was a monumental effort. So that was one problem I saw that could be sorted, and that's kind of where that was a line I took. But it was a challenge because we had to educate people. We had to educate why it's important. But the biggest frustration we got was, it's a mobile phone app. Most of our patients don't have mobile phones, and what happens if a patient doesn't have a mobile phone and they might have an older version of a mobile phone? And so that was the biggest challenge. So to overcome that, I had to then introduce a complementary product that would help those patients who didn't have mobile phone apps. It's no different, Craig, to what EasyJet done when they first started off their business. And EasyJet found that whilst most people booked their airline tickets and things like that online, they found, whilst it was a growing number, still, even to today, they're less than 90% of people use a booking platform. They will still go in and buy a ticket at the desk.
Wow. That's interesting, because we spoke to a lot of people on this podcast and said, where did the big idea come from? Was it market pull, or was it technology push? Was it deep tech research that spun out of academia? We had the Seismofit team on here talking about academic research from Copenhagen, and they spun that out. And then we had people like Jorge on here talking about working with healthcare providers and witnessing firsthand big challenges inside healthcare settings that he thought, I need to fix this. What was it like on your end then? Was it a challenge that you personally faced, or?
Yeah, I'd love to say I'm really smart and it was all academic based, but I ain't all that smart. This was actually a problem that I saw. I love problems. I love to own the problem. I see a problem and I want to build a solution. And this for me was no different. The scenario was perhaps a little bit different because I had come out of a job. I was made redundant from my previous employer. And through circumstances, I had to find a means to it wasn't even circumstances. Circumstances were the circumstances, but I saw a problem in the previous role that I was playing in the company, and I saw it unfold in front of me. And for me, it was like, why can't we solve this? This is an easy fix. Like, this is a terribly easy fix. And we don't have to over-egg the pudding. We can create something really simplistic that actually solves the problem. So for me, it was see the problem and own the problem, and truthfully love the problem. I mean, the way I look at it is I don't love the solution, I love the problem. So that's why, if the solution doesn't fit, I'll go off and find a different solution, or I'll build something else. But I'll always try and solve the problem, because it's not a problem that I see or I face only. It's a problem that organizations face or people face. And, if I can solve it for one person, then that's a big tick in the box.
Absolutely. So you were a successful founder. You started your business, you got an exit, a pretty decent exit within not too long a time. You were out, Manjit. You were out. How did it drag you back in? How did the entrepreneur bug grab you once again, and you wake up and think to yourself, you know what, I'm going to go through all of this pain again? What was that light bulb moment like?
I don't think I'm alone when I say this. When you do something that you love, you don't do it for any other reason other than the enjoyment of the problem that you're solving, right? It's not, I never set out in my last company for an exit. If I'm being very truthful, I hadn't planned for an exit. It happened. I just, like I said, I loved the problem. I owned the problem. And because I was so immersed in problem solving, when you lift your head up from the weeds and then you quickly see actually you're making an impact, that's when it becomes attractive to, companies or potential acquirers. So after I exited, it was a great position to be in, it gives you that economic freedom and allows you to do things that you potentially didn't get the chance to do previously. And if I'm being truthful, I went on a family holiday for the first time after the exit and never took my laptop computer, and that was the only time in probably the last 25 years where I've not taken my computer. But what I love doing is finding more problems. And as a result, I'm back right into the thick of it, but not just for one thing, but for multiple things. And that's what keeps me alive.
It's a very, very healthy attitude. And, I say this as a 4 times founder myself. You're never done. You're never finished. There's always that little spark that you see something and you think, okay, this can be done better. Or you'll wake up in the middle of the night with a crazy idea and write in your notepad next to your bed and go, you know what, this could be the next big thing, and you start exploring it and you get down that rabbit hole. It is very, very common, and it's inspiring. It's inspiring to hear people like you, Manjit, to say, you know what, I wanted to get back in there. I'm a problems guy and I like trying to resolve those issues that I face. So what are you working on? What are you working on right now, Manjit? Come on, you've. I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but when I heard you speak, I'm very, very interested in digital biomarkers right now. Digital biomarkers are very much the future of diagnostics, and you were talking about digital biomarkers in an application that I hadn't ever considered. So what can you tell us, Manjit, about your latest project?
So my latest project is actually came out of a conversation with a politician in the United States a couple of years ago, and it was around how do you solve addiction to drugs. I guess any addiction is probably got the same background elements that you would want to try and overcome. But for me, I looked at this problem and they actually raised a challenge for me and said, how would you solve this? And of course, me being a technical person, I thought, I can solve this. This is easy. Well, yeah, so I thought it was easy, and by crikey, it was not easy at all. But what I did learn across my journey is I developed an idea using technology, using digital biomarkers that would essentially look for sentiment, look for information from a patient through voice, audio, and other forms of analysis that can identify if there is a probability and what element or what level of probability a particular patient is going to become addicted to a particular product, especially if it's a pain relief product. And I kind of went through this whole journey of if I'm being dead truthful, I nearly fell into the trap that many founders fall into, which is let's go and build a product. And then I realized, hang on a second, you can't just build a product, because you can build a product and it could be the most amazing product, but you haven't actually gone off and tested the idea with anybody who's going to actually want to use this product, and will they actually use it? And my God, I've seen so many organizations that have fallen foul of that, where they go off and build these amazing products, but then they realize actually this didn't have a market fit. So for me, it was, let's create something that uses digital biomarkers in such a way that we can not only develop a product for today, but with the evolution of those biomarkers over a period of time, it keeps on evolving. The product keeps on evolving. The interaction between the patient and the platform, nothing changes, but how we interpret the data between that interaction is where we can, with the use of artificial intelligence, we can make it even more powerful and actually then make it more applicable into other conditions and morbidities.
it's really, really fascinating. There's two things I want to pick up on quickly. The first is I was reading something that came out of Y Combinator recently, and the one piece of advice they give their cohorts is find 100 people who cannot live without your product. And that feels very extreme. Cannot live without is very, very strong language, but the message is clear, and it's you don't have to build something for everyone, but if you build something for 100 people who cannot live without it, then you've got good traction, you've got good product market fit. So great tip there, find an audience who are going to engage. And then to talk about digital biomarkers, I could talk all day. It's an area that I personally find fascinating. And you've unlocked a very, very weird but cool application of the digital biomarker. Because when we talk about digital biomarkers, we tend to talk about diagnostic platforms. And that enters two territories. The first of which is there a better way to determine whether or not a disease or condition is present? There's very, very aggressive physical biopsies that are taking place, and could we circumvent all of that by utilizing AI and digital biomarkers? The second avenue for digital biomarkers is trying to tap into very, very challenging diseases and conditions to diagnose. Things like endometriosis is very, very tough to diagnose. So could digital biomarkers be the answer there? Yours, Manjit, is really, really interesting because it doesn't fall into any of those categories. We are looking at addiction as a whole, what causes it and who is more susceptible to it. It's almost a replacement for psychoanalysis, right? And right. That to me is fascinating.
It is. It absolutely is. I mean, look, I'm not an academic, but what I've done is I've surrounded myself with people who have got brains way bigger than I have or will ever have. But what I do recognize is that we've got to be disruptive. We've got to be radical in how we look at things. There are standardized protocols in how you capture information. There are, how you talk about, the use of digital biomarkers. The reality is there's an emergence of data on a regular basis, and there's always new information or techniques or methodologies that are coming out all the time. Interestingly, I've got a colleague who's an academic, a PhD, again, another super smart, bright guy, brain bigger than mine, who has done a paper on digital biomarkers, and him and I were having a conversation about this. And it was interesting because he kind of said similar to what you said, Craig, in the sense of the novelty element of the way we're tackling, the susceptibility of addiction. And he shared the paper with me. I read the paper, and I had that sort of moment, that euphoric moment where I kept on seeing things, and the synaptic receptors in my own brain were going off at 100 miles an hour, 1,000 miles an hour. I thought, this is excellent. This is actually what we're doing. And this colleague of mine actually now wants to use his knowledge, his experience, and come and join us to make the product even more invaluable to what we're doing. So I think we're like most companies. We have a product market fit for what we're doing. We've tested, we've validated, we've recognized the opportunity. But I think what's important now is to create element of defensibility and create a bit of IP around what we're doing. We need to bring in some really cool people who know how to do this. I mean, unfortunately, I'm not quite Mark Zuckerberg in paying, the $100 million sign-on fees from people from OpenAI, Sam Altman, paying $16 billion to Johnny Ivey to come in and build something like that. But, all I'm selling is my charm. I'm not sure if that goes too far either.
Yeah, sorry, listeners. Manjit is only offering a $50 million sign-on bonus. He can't quite go as far as $100 million.
Exactly.
He'll get you there. This is all way too positive, Manjit, and we get a lot of entrepreneurs listening into this podcast that like to hear about the struggle. They like to hear about the challenges. maybe it's the case that everything has been plain sailing and you are feeling amazing, but there's got to have been a couple of pitfalls, Manjit. Talk to us a little bit about a bit of the pain, a bit of those challenges.
I think you're being too kind when you say a couple of pitfalls, Craig. I think there's more than a couple of pitfalls. I'm going to say maybe a couple of hundred pitfalls. Look, this journey is the most exciting thing that I've ever done, and I would encourage anybody to do. It is, it's what keeps me. What keeps me young. I'm 104, and I don't feel it, and I don't look it. But I absolutely love what I do. I wake up every morning. I'm the sad person in my family who looks forward to a Monday morning, because for me, I've got everything set up. But I think I've always taken the approach of, and I don't know if it's kind of like a psychological filter, but I always look at something in a manner that I know I can solve it. I will find the square peg for the round hole. That doesn't mean that I haven't experienced pitfalls. I have had many pitfalls. I think when you're a solo founder in a business, the biggest challenge you have is isolation. And isolation, when you don't have anybody to bounce the ideas off, you are you're in a difficult scenario, because you start talking to yourself, but you find it a struggle to figure out, have I got the right idea? Am I going down a right path? And that in itself is a challenge. It's a lonely journey. It really is. So to overcome that, find people who are in a similar scenario, in similar situation, people who have done it, and people that are willing to help. I mean, after my exit, spent about 10 years working with a whole bunch of different startups in various parts of their journey, whether it was ideation, whether it was starting up, whether it was scaling, whether it was internationalization. I've spoken to some amazing founders who have gone off and done insanely well. But the pitfalls are many, and but don't languish on what the pitfalls are going to be. Pitfalls are just opportunities to learn. I often say to my children, I won't make the same mistakes. I will make new ones. And that's what you got to think about, is there's always going to be a pitfall. It's how do you tackle a pitfall? But look, you know what, for anybody who's either in the business, who's started up a company, who's got the idea, whose enthusiasm is sitting up here right now, and then they go and test the idea, and then the energy levels drop, they down here, and they think, oh, this is not worth it. And then they're at that susceptible position in their business where they think, this is not worth it. I'm not doing this anymore. Do you know what? That's when you do want to go through with it. That's when you do want to really push hard, because it's the ones that keep going that will make it a success, and they will make it a success. If you want it badly enough, own it, and you'll make it a success. But not to be confused with stupidity and tenacity. This Silicon Valley's common saying is, fail quick, fail cheap, fail fast, right? So I would say, if you've got an idea, test it before you go and build it, and then you will know whether you're onto something. But the only thing right now, I think, that's probably the biggest challenge for many people, and again, use it as an opportunity, use it as a superpower, is artificial intelligence is moving at such a speed, which, to be honest, in my view, is becoming a bit chaotic. But don't concentrate too heavily on building the technology. Make sure you could build the blueprint of what you're trying to solve. And I go back to what I said earlier on, is own the problem, understand the problem, rather than trying to focus on the solution, focus on the problem. When you know what you're trying to solve, then building the solution is the easy part.
Yeah, it's really, really good advice, and you're right. Resilience is absolutely key. You are, as an entrepreneur, going to face significant challenges, and it's about how you deal with those challenges and learn from those challenges, like you said. And you've got my utmost respect in that you've done it solo as a solo entrepreneur. We've had a lot of people on this podcast talk about the importance of having a founding team, 1-2 people that you can just crowdsource ideas from and go through it together. And I'm speaking to a lot of dilutive funding options, whether they be VC funds or angel groups, and they've even got disclaimers on their investment pages now saying, if you're a solo founder, it's not a no, but And we really are in a new world where it's make sure you surround yourself with others to go on the journey together. So yeah, great to see a successful person who's been there, done it, and certainly got the battle wounds and said on this podcast, yeah, it's probably better to find some other people to go on the journey with you. It's less painful.
Absolutely.
So yeah, good to hear. Good to hear. The second group of people that we have listening in and appearing on this podcast, Manjit, are the investors and the people that are looking to deploy funding into exciting startups. So talk to us a little bit about your funding journey to date then. Is this self-funded? Are you going to be looking at dilutive funding, or are you winning grants?
Great question. Again, I go back to my first journey. My first journey was fully bootstrapped. I hadn't raised a penny in funding. I basically built the business, and which was great, because when I sold the company, I basically made the decision, and I think I said during the talk that you were at, that I was quite literally walking at a very popular sandwich shop with sandwich in mouth and a can of Coke in the other hand, getting a call from the CEO of the acquiring company offering me to buy my business, to which I just said yes, without a second thought. And I've been very fortunate, as I said. So for me, I have never raised money, but that's not to say I wouldn't raise money, because I understand the value of raising money. But let me turn it around a bit, right? Let me turn it around a bit. In the last 10 years, I've done quite a bit of investing into different companies. And I can understand why investors ask the questions that they do. A lot of founders don't have the understanding of how money works, and they don't understand. They've never run a business. They may have never run a business. They may have a phenomenal idea and they've got a great team, but they don't understand how a business works. And what I've seen in some of the investments I've made is founders who don't know how to spend money. And I think some of the investors that will probably be listening to your podcast, this will resonate with them when they've got somebody pitching to them and they're looking to raise a bunch of capital, whether it's angel, and certainly with VCs, I know this would be the case, is they don't want to hear that you want to build a runway or you need money for a runway. The investors who really want to talk to you are the investors that you convince that you've got a technology that, exactly what Y Combinator said, that 100 people can't live without. So you've given the market validation, but what they really love is you have got a product that's not only built, but you've got a cost of customer acquisition, and you know that by raising £1 million or £500,000 or whatever our figure is, that you are going to be able to onboard customers with that money. So I've come from a bit of an old school mentality in that sense, that I would only go hunting for investment when I've proven to myself that this is an investable business. And equally, I want to scale the business. I want to grow the business. I want to build a team, but building a team because we can deliver faster. We can, get faster land grab, but not just to pay wages. Investors don't like to hear that. And I would never try and present that to an investor if I'm raising investment for my own business, and equally as an investor into other people's business. I don't want to be hearing that I'm only paying wages. I'm paying wages through my investment if there is an outcome. And if there's no outcome and I don't see a clear and succinct outcome for the company that I'm investing in, then it's a problem, right? And I think that probably is the reason why some of the companies or some of the investors who used to be angel investors have gone into VC or Series A, because the early stage companies are perhaps far too risky for them, because you're going to spend a long time trying to perhaps educate some of the founders on how to spend the money, where to spend the money. But I think there's a market opportunity for accelerators to actually provide an education or put people around some founders. I mean, like the universities do, where they have spin-out programs where they bring in people to help take a technology or a company of any nature, and life sciences in particular, from a university patentable idea into a commercial opportunity. So from an investor perspective, I think there's still a huge opportunity. There's a huge deal flow out there of amazing companies come out. I just think some of the investors, I think some of the companies who are seeking investment probably need just a little bit more education around that.
Yeah, it's a good tip. And I think you look at what investors tend to look for and what investors tend to care about. It's often the management team. Are these credible individuals that I could see myself backing and that I believe would be able to launch and run a successful business? And then related to that, it's IP, right? Is this business interesting enough that even if this particular idea doesn't work out, there's enough here that has been proven and enough here that can deliver value in a linear way. And then beyond that, like you said, and like Y Combinator have told us, you've got to have product market fit. You have to be developing something that people want and that people are going to use, because without that, you're working in isolation. You're developing things that will never ever see the light of day. And there's so many horror stories that come. I've seen so many pitch decks when I was working in venture capital, and they're solving a problem for one, and it's a problem that they created, and it's a problem for them. And you say, well, has this been validated? Has anyone outside of your head seen this issue? And they've said, yeah, loads of people are like me. And you very quickly turn around and say, no, nobody is like you. This is just a you problem. So
Yes.
Great advice as an investor. What's next, Manjit? You're in very early stages of, I'm not going to call it journey 2, it's probably journey 15, given all of your other interests and activities that you've got going on. But what's next for your business and yourself?
Well, it's probably the most exciting time for me. We have just essentially set up an address in San Francisco, which got set up just this week. I've appointed a member to the executive team who's based in San Francisco. So now the business is full steam ahead, and I'm kind of spending my time between the United States and Scotland. I'm using the same methodology of the company that acquired my previous business, which is, have sales and marketing arm over in the US and the development arm in Scotland and or in the UK for that matter. But certainly, so I'm selfish enough because I'm based in Glasgow. I'd rather keep it as close to home as possible, so I don't have to travel too far. So it's now all hands on pump, but it's probably the most exciting time. But this is really the test. Now is the test. This is the challenge, because we've done everything up until this point, and if I'm being very truthful, up until this point it was easy, as in, I identified market fit, checking the product, building the product. That's the easy part. Now we need to get pens on paper for people to actually commit to buying the system, using the system, licensing the system. And we're in early conversations with a number of organizations over in the US and in the UK for that matter now. So it's now it's commercials that we're focusing on.
So relating to that, what do you need? What's your ask for the world? If you could rub the magic lamp and the genie pops out, what are you wishing for?
What I would love to have is easy access into the people that I want to talk to, and they don't go on holiday all the time, and they haven't got family commitments, and they can actually respond to my telephone call right away. That would be the magic one, because what I'm giving them solves a big problem for them. So getting the time with them, giving them that feel of scarcity or fear of missing out, I want them to feel that now. So my job is to find people who are energized enough, who can actually assist me in putting or getting people on the end of a conversation or standing in front of them and pitching the product.
That's a very, very good and interesting ask. And we've got to be honest with ourselves. The world is noisier than ever. There are more startups than there has ever been. People have more choice, and AI has completely changed the landscape as far as where investor appetite lies, where commercial appetite lies, and everybody seems to be just waiting and seeing right now. And now is not the time to wait and see. Now is the time to act. So I am with you. People cannot sit back and say, well, I want to see what AI is going to do for my business. You don't need to do that. Move forward with exciting and interesting companies that are solving real world problems. So great You know, I would wish that too. I would wish that for all of the businesses that I've ever been involved in. Don't wait and see, just act.
Absolutely agreed.
Great chatting with you, Manjit. There's one more question that we like to end on. You've already given some great advice, but what's your one tip? If anyone is starting out, you know, you've got a fresh-faced 21-year-old, just finished university, thinking about doing a startup, what's the advice from somebody so successful and, as I've said, worn all of the t-shirts that you've worn in your time?
Crikey. I would say the one tip is your passion has got to fuel everything you got to do. So if you feel that you've got a great idea for a product or a service, don't overthink it, don't procrastinate, test your idea, test your product, go and do what a Y Combinator have asked you to do, go and test, would people buy your system or would people use your system? And if they can, then get right on it. But, and here's the big but, don't spend too long trying to build technology if you're a technology company. Bring some awesome people in who can turn an idea into a wireframe and then put it in front of people who said that they would buy it from you. Because you will very quickly realize whether or not you have got a product that's ready to ship, or if you've got to do that magic word that a lot of people do, which is pivot. And if you've got to pivot or you've got to modify your product to fit the market differently, then be prepared to do that. But it's if you've got the idea for whatever you want to do and you're passionate about it and you really understand it, and that problem is not just yours, it's a problem that's shared by many, then go for it. Procrastination is a killer. Don't procrastinate.
That is great advice. You know, perfect is the enemy of done, and there is no room whatsoever for perfect in startup. Companies have died through constipation, not being able to hit market quick enough. So I agree wholeheartedly, Manjit. Thank you so much for your time today. Much appreciated. We wish you all the best, and thank you everyone for listening in to the Medtech Ventures podcast. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Craig.